Okay, thank you for joining me and thank you so much for being here. I am Casey and I love science fiction. I love that it's loud and weird, personal, it's ambitious, and this month I wanted to celebrate that love by sharing a bunch of science fiction movies I think you should absolutely check out. First, we're going to go over 5 underseen gems that I think people should just need to see and talk about more, followed by some of my personal favorites that I just don't think get mentioned nearly as often as I'd like, in part because they're not part of a larger franchise. But everyone left a mark on me for sure, so consider this a rapid fire love letter to these world shattering stories that made me laugh and cry or just sit in stunned silence and think. Movies like 2023's Primevals. Here's a movie that took 60 years to make on and off. It was originally greenlit in the 1960s, it was shot in the 90s, and finished off by the director's friends long after his passing. The Primevals protagonists are a group of researchers scouring the mountains of the Far East, hunting for Yetis only to find a valley untouched by man, but full of proto people and lizard people, so adventure ensues. Do you love stop motion animation, but Mad God and the self referential stop motion were a little too fucked for you? Well, here is something way more akin to the classic Harryhausen stories, for better or worse. Much like those earlier movies, this is a deliberately slow paced adventure through the mountains until we get to the outstanding but expensive and time consuming stop motion effects work. The Primevals is not some lost masterpiece that's been rediscovered. It's a fun, low-budget adventure movie with some wonky acting decisions steeped in the late 80s and early 90s filmmaking stylings. It was a passion project made by a dead artist's friends. The studio admitted this project is not going to make a profit and don't expect to recoup their losses. Everything about this is special in its own right, and I think that absolutely deserves to be celebrated. 1962's The Creation of the Humanoids. Now, if you told me that this movie inspired Philip K. Dick's 1968 novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the basis for 1982's Blade Runner, I would not be surprised in the slightest. Because this entire movie is about robots so like humans they cannot be discerned from the naked eye, and their assimilation into larger society, all tied together with a few twists anyone familiar with popular cinema will probably recognize. The only thing that this narrative does that is exceptionally different is remove all the action that audiences kind of want to see in a movie about robots taking over humanity. Which means that this is a movie that moves at a snail's pace. It runs for 75 minutes but feels like 120 at least. All of it filled with very long philosophical discussions that will delight any major in the field, plus maybe a few heavy-hearted nerds like myself. It is a movie that really leans into both the philosophy as well as things like the psychology and sociology of humanity as we delve more and more into true artificial intelligence. Nobody should come running to this feature for the promise of cool effects or robot designs either. Those are either entirely recycled from other movies or just actors painted in silver and wearing contacts. And it largely works, or at least it did for me. I discovered this movie after catching a clip of it on TV in the early mornings a few years ago on a channel I cannot hope to remember. 2018's Prospect. This is a dirty, dangerous, pulpy science fiction movie where just breathing in this world is as dangerous as the people who mine it. It is everything I love about the genre. It is specific and vague at the same time. I can squint and see this story taking place in the worlds of Star Trek or Gate or Doctor Who. This feels like it could be a side story about normal people trying to survive in a crazy fucking universe, and it absolutely works. Mix a generally hostile environment with space prospectors prospecting for your nondescript MacGuffin, and you have yourself a constantly tense and dangerous setting that never lets our lead characters breathe. Literally, to the point where they swap out daddy figures at the end of the first act in a narrative decision that makes every moment that follows that much more nerve-wracking. This movie is surprisingly visceral at moments, but the gore is not so much the point as much as it is to continue to ground the characters. Both leads, Pedro Pascal and Sophie Thatcher, have blown up in recent years, and it is so well deserved. The range they give in this movie alone is staggering. And that extends to the whole crew. Everyone stretched their capabilities of what could be done with their budget, and it paid off across the board for me. 1985's Zone Troopers. This is not some bizarre tokusatsu franchise a la Zone Fighter or VR Troopers. I mean, big disappointment, but that is not the movie's fault, I guess. Allied soldiers during World War II stumbling on an alien crash and having to fight Nazis is not a bad premise. I don't think it even pulls it off poorly. It is just a little boring somehow, maybe because I just had watched 2018's Overlord. Maybe it's because I'm way more interested in the movie I'm building in my head now, but Zone Troopers is definitely trying and having a lot of fun while doing it, and I really, really appreciate that. A lot of that fun tone is carried by a cast who seem to be enjoying themselves, fitting into their World War II archetypes you know and love, and a soundtrack that is really upbeat in an almost modern way. There are definitely deeper themes here too. I don't think you can name a character Verona in a story about conflict and reconciliation unless you're hinting at something bigger. Maybe there's a metaphor in there about immigrants and Americans coming together to punch Nazis, but maybe I'm just projecting.
We will not help you kill your own kind.
The Nazis ain't our kind, pal.
And if your immersion is going to be broken by an underwhelming alien costume or effect, you might not get as into this movie as I did. Those are absolutely valid complaints that can take you out of a movie, along with the almost comedically paint-by-numbers military plot. But a movie reaching beyond its means is not the worst thing to me. If anything, it gets my mind racing to read between the what could have been lines in a way that is really fun for me. 1987's Gandahar. So, if you ever walked past a Criterion shelf at the video store and saw The Fantastic Planet and thought that felt a little too weird, here's something from the same guy that is like 10% more stream, and that 10% is really substantial. Gandahar is an 80s animated feature that modern fans of series like Scavenger's Reign and Primal should really, really check out, telling a deeply complex narrative and an exemplarily imaginative world. The characters might be as thin as the animation is limited, but even they go on arcs while the animation gets its story across beautifully. This feature follows the most cookie-cutter sugar cookie prince, with a little bit of blue food dye mixed in for good measure, being sent on a quest to figure out what the fuck is wrecking his pacifist utopia's day, sending him on the heroest of journeys across an equally beautifully dangerous planet to confront the metal men and their science fiction bullshit. He meets a topless woman to fight with, we get mutants that must have influenced Futurama on some level, we get time travel, super intelligences. This movie juggles a lot of ideas and it juggles them really, really well. Maybe at the cost of stronger characters, but the very clear journey they go on mean that even they change throughout the story. You just kind of see the change coming from a mile away, I'm sorry. This also features the director's signature animation style that is pretty limited by today's standards. Many either love it or really hate it. I find it endlessly interesting and charming and weirdly, weirdly creepy. Oh, and if you can handle the subtitles version, I suggest that. That soundtrack is far more interesting, and the dub involved the Weinsteins, and, fuck the Weinsteins. Yeah, science fiction isn't just about aliens and robots or time travel. It's about taking what we know and stretching it just far enough and reflecting something true back at us, whether it's fear, a little hope, or just the absurdity of being human. And the best part, there's always more out there. So if you've got a favorite that I didn't mention, please absolutely tell me about it. I want to hear about it. I want to watch what matters to you.